Peter Parker once swore that as long as he's around, no one dies. But what happens when a superhero makes a promise that no one can possibly keep? This promise is simple, it's noble, it's heroic, but it began as a desperate plea that became an impossible vow. This isn't some grand philosophy. It's a cage built from trauma and guilt. This vow was not forged in Spider-Man's origin, but in a horrific moment of failure years later when he failed to save the life of Marla Jameson. And this one rule, this impossible, crushing burden, is destined to break Peter Parker. This is the story of how Spider-Man's most defining characteristic is also his deepest tragedy. Hello and welcome to the Chemist's Codex. My name is Peter, and I like to find stories and the topics that catch my interest because I believe those stories can help us learn more about ourselves. To really get Spider-Man is to understand his relationship with responsibility. Every web he swings, every punch he pulls, every life he saves is a desperate attempt to atone for the lives he couldn't. But he can't save everyone, so can he ever really atone for his failures? That mantra, "no one dies," wasn't a choice made after a deep moral debate. It's a frantic scream from the soul of a hero pushed past his limits. It's a compulsion, an obsession born from his world falling apart yet again. Spider-Man's origin isn't the bite from a radioactive spider. It's the death of Uncle Ben. That moment is the big bang of the Spider-Man mythos. Before that night, Peter's powers were a ticket to fame and fortune. His uncle's death, at the hands of a thief Peter could have stopped, changed everything. It wasn't just a tragedy. It was Peter's first brutal lesson that his actions have consequences. His selfishness killed the man who raised him. And that's where the guilt starts. Guilt is the engine of Peter Parker's life, the constant, nagging voice in his head that truly believes every bad thing that happens is, on some level, his own doing. But then came the death of Marla Jameson. That event took his foundational trauma and amplified it. It proved that even with all his experience, his power wasn't enough. Leading up to Marla's death, Peter was faced with too many lost lives. The Kravinoff family orchestrated a gauntlet of cascading loss. Oksana Sestevich, Billy Connors, Maddie Franklin, Kane, Madam Webb, each death a new scar that chipped away at Peter's hope. Every death a failure of Peter's. Even with all his power, he couldn't save everyone. The actual story of Marla's death is brutal. Alistair Smythe, seeking revenge on J. Jonah Jameson for commissioning his father to build the original Spider Slayer, creates a new army of Spider Slayers. Smythe targets everyone Jonah cares about. His friends, his family. In trying to save everyone, Peter sacrifices his greatest advantage, his spider sense. That very act of heroism leaves him helpless when it matters most, and Marla pays the price. A piece of debris from an explosion knocks Peter down, allowing Smythe to deliver a killing blow to Marla Jameson. If only Peter still had his spider sense, this might have been avoided. If only he had been faster. If only he had been smarter. If only he had been better. After Marla's funeral, Peter has a dream. A dream where he's confronted with the face of everyone he has ever failed to save. Uncle Ben, Captain Stacy, Gwen, even the only person Peter has ever killed. Peter relives the night he let the thief go. Only this time he doesn't stand by. He acts. Peter finally kills the thief who murdered Ben, only for the thief's face to become Ben's. The message is clear and stark. If Peter becomes a killer, he betrays everything Ben stood for. Peter wakes from his nightmare, dons his Spider-Man costume, and goes for a swing through the city. Alone on a rooftop, haunted by every face he's ever lost, Peter makes his impossible promise. Whenever I'm around, no one dies. It's a vow born from trauma, a desperate plea for control, and it's destined to break it. Peter Parker is a character burdened by responsibility, perceived or otherwise. To Peter Parker, this responsibility is a positive duty. If he can help someone, then he must, because he's all too familiar with what happens if he fails to act. Every person he saves is someone's Uncle Ben. Every life lost can mean the end of the world to one person. His vow of no one dies turns this up to 11. Peter pushes himself to the extremes of his abilities to keep everyone alive, because he is trying to exert control over a chaotic world that constantly reminds him he can't. In issues before Marla Jameson's death, Peter often talked about how he needs one in the win column. In Amazing Spider-Man number 617, Peter laments to the Rhino, "Lately, it's like no one is winning. All around me, people are dying, losing themselves, destroying their own lives. And I just like one in the win column, you know? Just one." In Amazing Spider-Man number 644, upon being informed that a newborn infant he was protecting has died, Spider-Man breaks down. "I wanted to save him. All I've been through these last few weeks, all this hell, all I wanted was to save one little life, to not fail this one time, one little win, just one." Peter is tired of feeling helpless. He has all this power, but people around him keep dying. He keeps failing. So when Marla Jameson is killed, he manifests his trauma in a form of hyper-responsibility. He blames himself for all his failures, for the loss of too many lives, for not being able to save those he cares about the most. If Uncle Ben's death is the moment that started it all, Marla Jameson's death is when the universe looked Peter in the eye and confirmed his darkest fear. He has no control over who gets to live because he will never be good enough. Peter's vow to let no one die becomes his curse. He pushes himself harder than he ever has, nearly killing himself in the process. The first test comes fast. A killer named Massacre has taken hostages. Peter saves them, only after being shot due to his still missing spider sense. But he saves Massacre from being killed as well. His vow doesn't just apply to innocent civilians and good guys, it extends to the villains as well. But Peter's failures are just beginning. Each time he tries to do the right thing, the cost grows higher. It's Otto Octavius's final plan that does Peter in. After years of repeated beatings from superheroes, Otto's body is deteriorating. After all, he is still just a normal human. For his final plan, Otto creates his Octavian lens, a series of satellites that can either reverse global warming and save the world, or accelerate global warming and burn the world. By the end of the fight, the only heroes to make it to Otto's secret base are Spider-Man and Silver Sable. As the base is flooding, the duo's path is blocked by the Rhino. Knowing only one of them will be able to make it past, Rhino grabs Silver Sable and holds her in place as the water continues to rise. Peter is forced to make the choice. He could save Sable, who is in direct, immediate danger, or he could go and stop Otto and prevent a global genocide. He made the hero's calculation, the needs of the many, and let Silver Sable sacrifice herself. He saved everyone, but he failed to save her. Once Otto's plan has truly been stopped, Otto tries to commit suicide by collapsing into the rising water. But even then, Peter saves Otto's life, an act of heroism that ultimately becomes his undoing. Otto had engineered a way to swap his and Peter's minds, and it's this moment of compassion that gives Otto the ability to steal Peter's body. This is what leads into the first run of Superior Spider-Man comics. Peter's promise to save everyone becomes the very weapon that destroys everything he loves. The Superior Spider-Man exists because Peter Parker couldn't let his worst enemy die. In the aftermath of Otto's attempt to burn the world, Mary Jane throws a party wanting to celebrate Peter saving the world, even if they're the only ones who know it was him. Despite her best efforts, Mary Jane cannot get Peter to enjoy himself. Peter admits to MJ that he feels like he didn't win. He wasn't good enough, and he let Silver Sable die. Mary Jane tells Peter that she gets it. To him, everyone is someone's Uncle Ben or Gwen Stacy. And that's when Peter tells her about his vow. Mary Jane lets Peter know that that's one of the stupidest things he has ever said, and that the vow of no one dies is an impossible standard no one could live up to. She tells Peter that even with his amazing gifts, he's still human. People make mistakes, and his vow is something that no one could ever really achieve. A few pages later in that same issue, Morbius asks Spider-Man who matters more, the living or the dead. This is where Peter starts to soften his vow. He will never let a person die if he can save them, but he stops trying to hold himself to a standard of trying to save everyone. He stops fighting for those who have died and starts fighting for those who are living. Peter's vow doesn't fail because he's weak. The time when Peter stuck to his vow as strongly as he could shows how strong he really is. He was driven to make new technologies, new suits, new webbing, to ensure that he would never again be too slow or too far away to save a single life. Even Peter losing his spider sense drove him to train with Shang-Chi and develop a new style of martial arts designed around his abilities. Peter's vow didn't fail because he was weak. Peter's vow failed because it was never truly possible. When faced with the death of Uncle Ben, Peter truly became Spider-Man. When faced with the death of Gwen Stacy, Peter learned that his actions as Spider-Man can hurt those he loves as Peter Parker. And when faced with the death of Marla Jameson, Peter made an impossible vow. A vow that no one dies. Peter learns a lesson from every life he cannot save. No matter who they are, Peter knows that every person means the world to someone else. And if he can make sure everyone is saved, then maybe he can stop feeling so terrible about the lives he couldn't save. When Mary Jane told Peter that he's still human, that people make mistakes, and that no one can ever really live up to no one dies, Peter replied by saying, "I know, but there have been days where just believing I could was all that kept me from going crazy." Spider-Man is at his most compelling when he's lost and defeated, but he still tries anyway. In the end, Peter Parker couldn't stop death. But he reminded us why we try. And maybe that's the point. Spider-Man's vow that no one dies is the tragic heart of this story. It's the promise of a man trying to bargain with a universe that doesn't care. It's a promise he is destined to break. And this isn't a character flaw, it is his character. The guilt isn't just a motivator. It's the lens through which he sees the world. It's what makes Spider-Man so painfully relatable. That feeling of being overwhelmed, of carrying burdens that are too heavy to bear, of feeling like you're defined by your worst mistakes. But Spider-Man's heroism isn't found in keeping his vow, but in his persistence even when he fails. He gets back up, he puts the mask on, he swings out into a city that often hates him to protect people who will never really understand what he's given up. He does this knowing that, at least on some level, he's going to fail again. Knowing that someone will get hurt, that the cycle of grief will continue. The impossible burden is what makes him Spider-Man. His greatest tragedy isn't that people die on his watch, it's that he will never truly forgive himself for it. And in that, he reflects the most human struggle. The desperate, heartbreaking, and noble attempt to be better than we are, even when we know we're doomed to fall short. Thanks for watching. Spider-Man's story is filled with these impossible choices, where his ideals clash with reality. And I'm curious, what do you think is Spider-Man's most notable failure? Is it letting the thief go on Uncle Ben's death? Is it the snap that killed Gwen Stacy? Let me know down in the comments. And if you want more deep dives into comic books and superheroes, make sure you subscribe for more content.